Welcome back, everybody. This is Chris Salas, Associate Professor of Social Work here at El Paso Community College. Welcome back to another episode of Keeping It Social, a show that aims at bringing light and awareness to daily issues that affect not only El Paso, but our citizens here of El Paso of all ages. And that couldn't be any more important or more at the center of things in today's conversation. Today we're talking about music education and music and fine arts in our public schools. How far have we gone? What are some of the new trends? And what are some of the barriers, even stigma associated with music education in our public schools? Today's guests are Mr. Philip Barasa, our Director of Fine Arts for El Paso Independent School District, and Dr. Curtis Treadway, Associate Professor of Music at the University of Texas at El Paso, and also really emphasizes and teaches the music education classes at UTEP. So, gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Excellent. So, before we even get into and dive into the meat and potatoes of our conversation, why don't you tell us a little bit about your experiences with music education? Maybe your experiences, what got you to where you are now, and talk a little bit about your own current position. So, Dr. Treadway, why don't we start with you?
I grew up in Florida. I went to school in Florida. I was a former high school band director in Florida. Did graduate work, came out here to El Paso. And so my passion has always been the teaching side of music. And I think for me, if I hadn't been a music teacher, I would have been an English teacher or a math teacher or something. And so I really enjoy helping to train the next generation of teachers. And I'm very fortunate, sometimes at the really big universities, there's a music ed professor for the band people, and a music ed for the choir people, and a music ed professor for the orchestra people and stuff. And I get to do all of that. And I just really enjoy getting my fingers into all sorts of different areas. And sometimes, you know, when kids get a job, they don't always land in the slot that they thought they would land in. So that helps also. This is my 31st year at UTEP. So I've been here a while, and I've had the opportunity to see how things have changed in the schools over the last 3 decades.
Right. Yeah, and I think it's important to note that not only have you been the professor for music education, but in prior years you've been the director of the marching band, director of the pep band, the UTEP symphonic band, and currently you are the director of the UTEP mariachi.
Yeah, so I did the marching band for 17 years, the marching minors, and now I do mariachi, which is not part of my wheelhouse. It's been a learning experience for me. I'm very, very fortunate that my students have been very patient with me while I try to figure out how this genre works. But I've really, really enjoyed doing that.
Awesome. Thank you for being here. Mr. Barasa, what about yourself?
So I'm from El Paso, and growing up I did dance, theater, band, and art. And so I was actually a television news reporter. Graduated from Boston University, communications, and then you know, weird circumstances brought me to teaching theater and dance. So I had successful theater and dance programs, you know, throughout the city, and then it just one thing led to another, and before you knew it, I became an administrator, and now I'm in charge of all fine arts at El Paso ISD. And you know, we keep growing, we keep on moving the wheel forward for all fine arts, and my mission is to live, breathe fine arts, and also advocate for it, because it's so important that we not take fine arts for granted.
Definitely. Wow, that's great. I mean, I think, do you feel that as an administrator it's important to have had your experiences and really the entire spectrum of fine arts?
Actually, yes. You know, from the teaching perspective to the administrative side, had I not had all those, and then act as a student as well, rather, then I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing now.
Definitely.
So it's super important.
Got you. And so your history in newscasting and such, don't be too critical of this side of the table. But I'm actually really glad that we got really the entire level, right? So from the public schools, from K to 12, and then Dr. Treadway to talk about that transition from the grade schools, right, our public
Right.
schools, all the way to college, and then, like you mentioned, making it a career of that. So, with that in mind, Philip, tell me a little bit about, as the head of EPISD's Fine Arts program, right, the largest district in our city, in our county. And just for sake, we did invite other members of other districts. Unfortunately, because of scheduling, they weren't able to be here. So maybe we can do a follow-up with everybody, including all districts, maybe in the fall. But again, as the representative of the largest district, you were telling me earlier that you feel that EPISD has made music and music education a priority now. Would you like, please tell us a little bit more about that?
Okay, so I'm very happy to say that at our campuses right now for elementary, we are actively looking to expand our fine arts opportunities. Right now, our schools either have art or music, or they have a form of it, or they have both, depending on on what elementary school you go to. So we're actively looking to expand that to where we can offer that, everywhere. And not only that, but other fine arts opportunities. But the great thing is that now we're at a position where our secondary schools, middle school and high school, now the priority is fine arts, as far as like, okay, let's create strong programs. Let's keep the program strong. Let's go ahead and invite as many students to participate in it, because bottom line is when your child is participating in a music program, for instance, studies show, and this is research proven, and studies show that your student will actually, in college entrance exams, score significantly higher, up even more than 100 points higher than those students who did not take music courses from throughout middle school and high school. Mm-hmm. So we always advocate that. We always say, because like in El Paso especially, what happens is you have a kid, and right away you think of putting them into t-ball. You think about putting them into soccer. You think you think that route, right? Mm-hmm. But that's the majority. And then you find a minority that are putting them into piano lessons, into voice lessons, into theater. And so what we're actively doing is we're actively letting parents know that when put your kids in the athletic part, definitely 100%, but also consider putting them in fine arts, because it's also because if you have them both athletically and in fine arts, you have a well-rounded child. And not only do you have a well-rounded child, but you have a child that's going to be ready for all the challenges that come into this world. And so what we're always saying is, and I say this at a lot of our presentations, whenever we have a concert, whenever we have a dance recital, anything like that, I always thank the parents for having them in their fine arts programs. I'm like, you have made the right choice, because you have just made your kid smarter. For dance alone, if you're a dance kid, research says your IQ is 15 points higher, than kid who doesn't, because there's so much muscle memory as well. You're activating different parts of the brain. Mm-hmm. I have a 6-year-old, and I have her in. It's going to sound a little extreme to some people, I'm sure, but I have her in gymnastics, I have her in dance, and I have her in piano, and she has a class every single day except for Sunday, and on Saturdays she has 3 classes. And she loves it, and the reason I have her is because she's asking for it, just so you know. Okay, but when she doesn't go, she's, but the point is that the more you have your kid, actively engaged, the more successful they're going to be. The more successful they're going to be in life, because then when they become adults, no matter what hits them, mm-hmm. They're going to learn all those skills. One thing for sure, like right now, our big push is to get as many kids involved into our fine arts programs. A huge program is marching band. Let's take marching band, for instance. Marching band teaches you discipline, teaches you responsibility. It teaches you to work with others, whether you like the other people or not. It teaches you that you're only as strong as your weakest player, right. your weakest link, so to speak. and it teaches you that the true meaning of teamwork to get something done. So when I was in marching band, I still take everything that I learned, that I apply in everyday life, whether it comes with my team at Fine Arts or wherever it is. And all those skills, have still followed me and still continue to follow me.
If I can piggyback on what Sil said. So there's two things. First of all, so I'm the old man here. I've been here 30 years. And so when I first came to El Paso, just about every school district was fairly deficient in elementary music. And that's one of the great things that I've seen change over the years, is more and more opportunities for elementary music, more hires for elementary music positions and things like that. So that's great, and props for making that happen. The other thing is, when we kind of look, there's a lot about intelligence that we don't know, because you don't want to crack somebody's brain open and look inside. But we kind of know that you have one part of your brain devoted to speech, and one part of your brain devoted to vision, and one part of your brain devoted to language. And so UT San Antonio did these CAT scan studies, MRI studies. And what we kind of think is one of the big things about intelligence is not this part of the brain or this part of the brain, but how the different parts talk to each other. And what we find is when you're engaged in the fine arts, when you're engaged in music, when you're engaged in movement, the brain just lights up. And so if I'm reading music, I have a visual thing, I've got these music symbols, I have to decode what they mean. That turns into a physical response. And so when kids are young, when they're 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, that brain is still developing. And when we have music as part of that, when we have dance as part of that, we're strengthening those connections from the different parts of the brain. And we think that's why so many kids in the arts come out doing better on the ACT, come out doing better on the SAT. We can't say that for certain, but it sure seems to point in that direction.
Definitely, yeah.
And I also want to add, because there's always a stigma too, like oh, my kid isn't musically talented, or my kid isn't artistic, or I want to say every kid is musically talented, every kid is artistic, just like any other realm. So it's a thing that it's a craft. You build it. It's just like reading. When you're reading, you can't say, oh, my kid's not a good reader, so I'm just gonna not teach him ever how to read. And speaking of reading music, you just learned a whole new language. So that activates yet another part of the brain. That makes it that much smarter.
And again, every kid has musical talent. We want to find the right slot for that. For some kids, it's going to be band, and for some kids, it's going to be orchestra, and some kids, it's going to be singing, and some kids, it's going to be music theater. And that's the cool thing about the public schools, is that we tend to offer a menu of fine arts options. And so, there's a place for you, excuse me, there's a place for you here somewhere. And we want to make sure that you get that opportunity.
Yeah. And I think the thing to echo of everything you guys are saying is the opportunity, like you said, that the opportunity has evolved, not just in high school where you have your band programs, your choir, your dance and such, but it's evolved in music to middle school for beginning band and beginning programs, but then even to the elementary level where you have elementary music. You have maybe a general music teacher, that teaches everything about music, from shakers to the non-wind, non-percussion, but your beginning instruments,
boom
exactly.
whackers,
so
percussion.
How? Maybe this is Philip, you can start with this one, but what have the schools done to maybe dispel that stigma of I don't want to put my kid in music, or the arts, and putting them more in athletic or more academically rigorous activities, and instead of a music or a fine arts oriented program?
So step one is, every elementary kid is required under TA to take 45 minutes of fine arts a week. Okay, that's step one. So then the great thing is that at least you have that,
that
fine arts
backing.
Yes, at least once, every 45 minute block per week at least. A lot of, depending on the campus and depending on the individual teachers, a lot of individual teachers incorporate it incorporate art into their lessons.
Right.
They incorporate music into their lessons. And so the kid just gets even more fine arts during that week. So that's step one that we're doing. And so that's another part of it, because we also want to emphasize that if a student does not have that outlet, you can drill, math for 3 hours, but after a certain amount of time, the student will shut down, even if you are trying to drill math, and for 3 hours.
Right.
And everyone needs to learn math, yes, and everyone needs to learn English and learn reading, of course, but you also need to have that creative outlet. And then not only that, but another thing that we also emphasize is when you do a deep dive into some of the careers that we tend to think in general terms that they're higher paying, like lawyers and doctors and such like that. So when you're looking at the people who are getting accepted into those programs, the majority of them, or a large group of them at least, have a strong fine arts background. It is no coincidence.
A lot of people kind of think that the whole goal of education is to come out with an occupation, that school is all about getting a job and doing work. We know, not just in El Paso, but nationwide, over half of all college graduates wind up in a field they did not major in.
Right.
And so we want to prepare kids for anything. And so some kids, people go like, well, why are you doing music, or why are you doing this? This is not a career move. Well, it may not be a career move, but there are certainly a lot of skills that transfer into any career. The discipline of that, or working with others. But the other thing is, we don't always know how it's going to play out. Like we said, who knows what they're going to major in. I need somebody in my society to build that new bridge on I-10. And so I teach geometry and calculus to a lot of kids, because I don't know which one's going to be the guy who does it. Right. And the other thing is even if it's not a career, in many of our professional the El Paso Symphony Orchestra, some of those people are full-time musicians. And some of those people majored in music, but their day job is something else. But as a society, if we want to have high quality arts, we want to make sure that we have the opportunity to get there, even if it's not necessarily leading to a big fat paycheck.
Right. Yeah. I recall, in full disclosure, Dr. Treadway was my band director at UTEP. Back a couple years back, we won't say how many years back, but
okay.
I had the opportunity and the pleasure of serving as drum major for your marching band. I'm a product of EPISD, having gone from Hillside Elementary to Ross Middle School, and then graduating from Burgess High School. Right, so I've gone through the public system and then to higher education. But you mentioned something regarding opportunity, and before we move into that, you talked about the opportunities that are being given to children in elementary schools, middle schools. On your end, teaching the future teachers, right? Yes, they will decide whether they want to be high school band directors, high school teachers of whatever subject, middle school, or even general music in elementary. What are you doing on your end as a music education professor to prepare the students to deal with some of those issues of what does my kid have to take music, and to maybe even promote the music program at their schools like EPISD, SISD, YISD?
There's two answers to that. And so one is, like we said, we know that music helps you do better on certain exams. We know that kids who are involved in music tend to have more successful lives and things like that. So music is a great tool in society, but we also want to do music just for music's sake. That I want you to be in the choir not to boost your test scores. That's cool, but I want you to be in the choir because I think you're going to like being in the choir. And I think that music, I'm getting deep and philosophical here, music or the arts in general, they make you a better person. They make you a better person in seeing the world in different ways. They make you a better person in your emotional state, your empathy, your ability to feel what other people are communicating, ways that we communicate beyond words. And so it's like, you know, we don't join the Boy Scouts to be a professional Boy Scout.
Right.
You join the Boy Scouts to be a better person. And I think the fine arts also helps you to be a better person. I could go real deep into that. I won't do that today.
Let me add to that. So kids, when you see kids nowadays and you see them, you know, at a restaurant, for instance, you see a lot of them stuck to their tablet or stuck to their phone. You see teenagers like this, right? And you know, you say, hello, hi, good morning. You know, you're lucky to get a grunt or whatever, right? So the fine arts, by incorporating fine arts, if you have your kid in a choir program, if you have your kid in a band program, theater, you know, what you're doing is the kid has to perform. The kid has to speak. The kid has to get up there and has to, you know, have those skills, develop those skills. And when you're looking into, okay, how do I prepare my child, you know, for this world? That's how you prepare your child for this world, by having them in those fine arts programs, because they're going to have to come off of that tablet. They're going to have to come off of that phone because they're going to have to perform, you know, or they're going to have to create. And when you're looking at when like the biggest companies, you know, that are hiring, whether it be engineering companies or whether it be like Google or anything like that, especially with all the technology that's already out there, all the AI that's already out there, they're saying, I'm not necessarily looking for somebody who has, you know, these skills. I'm looking for, because I already have the technology for that. I'm looking for somebody who has the skills to problem solve, to create, to be creative, and who have those skills to be able to work with other people and to be able to demonstrate and to be able to show. And that's what fine arts teaches you. Fine arts teaches you how to express yourself, you know. And so whenever parents ask me, like, hey, you know, why should my kid be in fine arts? These are a lot of the reasons that I tell them.
In the early days of computers, going back into the 1960s, you couldn't hire computer science majors because that major didn't exist yet. Right. And so IBM and Burroughs and some of these people, they were actively seeking out graduates in music to be computer programmers because they understood an abstract language. They understood the discipline it takes to go line 1, line 2, line 3 when writing code. And then kind of related to this, believe it or not, a lot of law schools have a very, you know, you kind of major in something else and then you go to law school. Right. And a lot of people who get accepted into law school are actually music majors.
Wow. Interesting. And you know, both of you talk about the life skills that are taught through music, right, or through fine arts in general. And I recall, you know, Dr. Treadway, in your band used to talk about how you would rather have a band full of good people than good players, right?
Yes.
And talking about the demeanor of people, I can tell you, even as a professor, having worked as a therapist and such, and even now teaching this career path to students, half of the time I find myself going, well, when I was in band, right? And you could see this look of, what are you talking about? I'm like, just humor me, right? For example, you have, as a conductor, as you have X amount of people on your ensemble, right. Well, you have to convey what you want to 60, 300 people, right? So I might have to talk to this group this way, right? Kind of lay down the law. Guys, we got to do this. This group, like, hey, it sounded a little funky here. Can we play it again? Yeah, do you guys hear something? Right. You know what needs to be done, but you learn how to talk to different people. As I tell my students, as a social worker, you know, that's, how do I apply that? Well, my 8 o'clock patient is not going to be like my 9 o'clock patient. It's not going to be like my 10 o'clock patient. My group, I'm going to have, it's like an ensemble, right? You're going to have your tuba player, you're going to have your lead trumpet player, you're going to have your percussionist, people that are isolated and people that are like right on it. And so it's how to bring people together. But that's some of the skills that, like you mentioned, that you learn through music. And like you said, that half of the time people don't go into a music field or a music career, but then they apply them in whatever field they end up going to.
And I want to say that, like, half the time they don't, and that's also because a lot of times they're not aware. Because when they think fine arts, they think, oh, you have to have a lot of money to be in it. You have to really invest. And you were asking earlier about like what El Paso ISD has done. So we do provide the instruments for for our students. We do provide the opportunities so that regardless of your socioeconomic scale, you can participate, and you can actively participate, successfully participate. And I go to a lot of our concerts and recitals, etc. Right, and when you see like your high school seniors, for instance, performing over there, whether it be choir, whether it be orchestra, whether it be band, immediately I think, and everyone in the audience thinks, all those kids on stage, they're going to be great. They're set. Whatever they do in life, they're going to be successful. And why? Because they're there performing. They've already received all those skills that no matter what life is going to throw at them, no matter what career path, they're going to be all right. And so that's when I see it in the parents' face, especially when it's their graduating senior and they do something special, for the seniors up on stage, and sometimes they bring up the parents, to give whatever. It's a great feeling because you're like, wow, and this is what it's all about.
Right. And for both of us, we're not just preparing the next generation of performers or teachers, we're preparing the next audience. The El Paso Symphony doesn't mean a whole lot if the concert hall is empty. Right. And in fact, it's kind of the other way around. The community, the audience, wants this musical experience or this fine arts experience, and then that's the reason why the El Paso Symphony exists, is to deliver that. And it's not just the traditional band, choir, and orchestra. It's who's going to buy the Taylor Swift tickets, and who's and some of it you get caught up in the cultural whatever. But there's a lot of stuff. Let's just pick on Taylor Swift. One, she's got to know how to sing. She's got to know how to present herself on stage. She's got set builders and sound engineers and all this other stuff. And it's an army of people in the fine arts that make that happen. And so, and some of those people, maybe they majored in music, maybe they didn't, but I'm sure they all came from a music background.
Right. Yeah, definitely. And I think that kind of wraps everything up in a little bow, because it's not just the people that walk through the classrooms and end up being the performer, right? Ends up being the one that picks up the instrument and makes it a lifelong journey, or stops and does something else. That it's everyone in the background as well, right?
Right.
And speaking of which, El Paso ISD is one of the only districts, that has professional theater technicians, working for us. And so we have student technicians throughout the high schools that run the lighting, run the sounds at all of our auditoriums, and they're in training, because that's a huge skill. That's a very necessary skill.
Right. One of my friends, she has a brother who's a professional costumer in Los Angeles. And I would have never thought, like, you can make a living just making clothes for... Yes, and I mean, if you think about it, how many shows are on TV or cable or streaming? Somebody's got to put all those actors into not just any old costume, a costume that's appropriate for that scene or whatever. And so a lot of times we kind of neglect what's going on behind the scenes.
Definitely. Yeah, and something that we champion here at the college is that we will have our doctors, we'll have our engineers, but there's people, like you said, that will have to do other things behind that. We need our electricians, people that are firefighters, our law enforcement, people that will never reach a doctorate or a master's level, not because they can't, it's not required in every field.
Right, but I still want the firefighter to buy a ticket to the concert.
Exactly. But that goes into allowing that opportunity from early on, allowing them the opportunity for their children to see that and seeing, oh wow, maybe build that sense of community.
And speaking of that opportunity, El Paso ISD has the longest running summer musical. We're going up on 39 years now.
Wow.
And so we're really proud of that. And so every summer, we have our musical, and behind the scenes, you have all the students from costuming
Right.
to hair and makeup to constructing these massive sets, and then and to adding all sorts of, the bells and whistles to the sets. It's super complicated, and the kids really, really own it, and they learn it.
Right.
It's a great experience. So it doesn't mean it's just for the performers who are playing the music, or the performers who are acting or singing or dancing. It's also all the kids that are involved in this production through fine arts who are backstage and doing the sound and the lighting as well, and the all the construction and hair, makeup, costumes.
Even we don't do this at UTEP, and I don't know if EPISD, but there are some schools out in the United States where they literally teach classes on DJing. And we could argue that, that's not really being a music. But at the basic level, a good DJ has to read the rise and the fall of the audience, and kind of create tension and create release. And this is a time I want to get everybody pumped up, and this is the time where we're going to back off and relax. And those are the same principles that we do in any of the arts.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you both coming today. Believe it or not, I mean, we were having this conversation of like, how are we going to filter? But I mean, we actually we probably got through half of the topics we want to talk in. So I would hope that you both would consider coming back and continuing conversation, talking about some of the barriers, talking about some of the things that may be coming down the pipeline at both the EPISD in the city, at UTEP, that will help enhance the music experience and improve the opportunities at all levels. But until then, again, thank you all for allowing us into your home and into your streaming services. Make sure you look at any of the programming at EPCC-TV by going to the EPCC-TV channel. At the same time, if you're interested in any of the music opportunities that have been spoken about today, please feel free to visit the websites from EPISD's Music Department and Fine Arts, YISD, SISD. Again, unfortunately, representatives from both of those districts were not able to make it. Completely understand, everybody's very busy professionals. And as well from our local college and universities, from the EPCC Music Department, which has a lot of UTEP graduates, NMSU as well, and UTEP as well. So that information will be posted for you as well, so that you can have access to that information. And at the end of the day, some of these questions we didn't have a hard conversation per se today, but there are some pressing issues that can come up at any point in time. All I ask is at the end, just keep it social. Thank you all.